Hi, and welcome to Empower Together. I am your host, Desiree Parker, and today I am so excited to have with me one of my closest friends, Shani Bacy. She is a licensed social worker. She is the chief program officer for The Landing, which is an amazing drop-in center for commercially sexually exploited people here in Houston. It's was kind of a landmark, you know, organization when they opened, and they're just doing such amazing work. And Shani is a counselor and a social justice warrior. She just does all kinds of cool stuff. And so I'm super excited to have you. How are you
Thank you. I'm doing well. Doing well. Waking up, drinking my coffee, but doing good.
today?
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. I've got my so I totally feel that. But yeah, so Shawnee and I met it was like a million years ago, when we both were just first getting into anti-trafficking work. So this was like 2009 or 10, right? Like
Yeah, I would say
you
2000
were,
something around there. 2008,
yeah,
2009.
yeah, because I was starting as a volunteer, um, with like at that time one of the only anti-trafficking organizations in Houston, and you were interning um, uh, as someone who was living in the house
Right.
where the women were doing recovery. Before that, though, and you started doing just an internship, right? Like this was just going to be an internship.
Right. So yes, when I got involved, I started as a volunteer, and then transitioned into the internship, um, with the
Yeah.
intentions of just staying in the internship. I was a teacher at the time, so I was an educator, and I
Mhm.
had summers off, and so with those summers off, that's really how I started to spend my time diving into this work.
That's so awesome. So you already were doing like helping work by being a teacher.
Hmm.
So is that something I guess you'd always been drawn to, was like education and, um, or more specifically, like just empowering kids or people, or, what drew you to teaching in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to. I knew that I wanted to help people, be around people, and I've always been that kind of person in the family or with friends. So just wanting to
Mm,
be around people, help people. When I started my teaching career, early on, I taught for about 8 years before I transitioned into social work, and
yeah.
social services, things like that. And
Hmm.
it was certainly a good launching point, and just
Yeah.
understanding kind of the dynamics that people are, living with and going through. And one part about being a teacher, as I said, I always needed to be in a school where there was, a lack of support. So that was
Yeah. Like a
one
Title
of,
One or something.
yeah, Title One. Like, that was going to be it. Like I had to be in a Title One school where I felt like I could make an impact and empower those
Yes.
families, kids, things like that.
Yeah. And for those of you outside of Texas, because I think Title One is a Texas designation, um, it's a school that is, has, I think, more than two-thirds or something like that, of the families that attend there live, at or below poverty. Um, so I mean, that's a really important thing to have people that pour into those schools, because they don't have the same funding from, parent organizations. They don't have the same involvement because a lot of times they have single parents or parents, that work long hours and stuff like that. So there's not the same,
Right.
um, engagement, level that you get in, schools that have plenty of money.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so that's awesome. So you transitioned, you kind of made a decision after spending time in the anti-trafficking world and kind of shifted over to social work. Because I think I remember, like, we were talking about it when you were still, we went on an outreach together, I think once,
Okay.
um, before we really got to be like close friends. We were on an outreach, and I remember you talking about how you were getting out of teaching, and going to be
Okay.
doing it part time.
Hmm.
So
So I don't remember that. I know we've done
yeah.
outreach together.
Yes.
Um, so I guess, yeah, I was thinking about it for a while, I guess. Um, yeah, so it was a I don't know what drew me or pulled me. I went when I went to actually started. I learned about trafficking when I was on a relief trip to Haiti with my
Mm-hmm.
church. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that had to be like 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on a relief trip, met some other individuals on that trip, and they were telling me about trafficking and what that entailed. And that was actually the first time that I had been exposed to um, probably even the term used in that context. And so when I came
Yeah.
home, um, doing a lot of research and trying to understand what that looks like, and I honestly thought that maybe I would go back to Haiti and fight this, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
this issue called trafficking. And that's when I started to get connected locally, realizing that
Mm-hmm.
trafficking, happened um, even where I
Right
live.
here.
And so that was where the transition kind of began, was on that trip when I went to Haiti, and then kind of learning and coming back and just really needing to understand more about the issue and what to do. And so, yeah. And then that's how it all began.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, kind of like me, we were in the same organization for several years before we really were even working together.
Right.
Because for a long time, I was in more of the outreach end of things. So I was more on the operational side, and I ran outreach and things like that. And Shani, you were living in the house, attending to, specifically survivor care and things like that. So while we were working for the same organization, and not a huge organization, we were in very separate capacities
Right.
that didn't interact really
Right.
much at all. So I think when we really got to know each other was in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
one of the longest years ever. When I was acting executive director of the organization due to some time off that the leaders needed. And Shawnee was the director of a really awesome program, an emergency shelter assessment center that we had opened up. And that was a long 8 months. That was
Mm-hmm.
hard. Um, we were like, I think we talked constantly because it was like there was so much going on with the long-term program running, and then now this emergency shelter running that was just exploding. I mean, it was so busy all the time. I mean, I know you were running your butt off,
Mm-hmm.
but that it was such a good program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, talk a little bit about that, because I mean, you created something that was really cool.
So I guess if we're talking about, I guess in the context of trafficking,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different needs, different types of programs are needed. And at that time, the community was talking frequently about how there was no place to take survivors or overcomers immediately. Um, in the nonprofit space, social service spaces, one of the biggest issues is there's not enough places for people to live or to stay. And so that
Yeah.
was the purpose of this program, was to find a place where people could come, short term, um, be assessed, get their needs met, and then identify what the next best step would be.
Hmm.
And so that really was the purpose of that program, is to find a place where it's always accessible. There's always a bed, and it just gives people time to, one, separate from whatever trauma or trafficking they're experiencing, but
Yeah.
then also just come up with a plan,
Yeah.
because there's lots of different opportunities and different things, different places, different locations, different needs. And
Yeah.
so that was the goal of that program at the time.
Yeah. And it ran beautifully, and it was just like, but it was constantly just like, I mean, blowing and going. It was just like
Yeah.
people coming and going, and because it was taken with, women that were coming right of they were coming right off the street. So there was a lot of movement and a lot of, you and the other employees there. I mean, y'all were dealing with a lot of like in your face trauma
Right.
through a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And you had a great staff. And yeah, and then that was just a rough year because we kind of then just had the rug yanked out from under us.
I didn't hear the last
When
thing
it
you
had to
said.
shut down, I said we kind of had the rug yanked out from under us
Oh, oh, oh,
when it
oh.
had to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was a rough year, I know for
Mm-hmm.
us. So funding kind of, I don't think people understand how much money it takes to
Mm-hmm.
run anything that is residential, and anything that provides for round the clock care.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so that was a rough one. But I know you moved on from there. I stayed with that organization for another several years, but you moved on from there and started working for the sheriff's department, right?
Right. Yeah. And so that was it. That was an interesting transition. It was
Yeah.
we had I found it was a position for the sheriff's office. It was a case manager,
Hmm.
but specifically for those who've experienced human trafficking. Um, now that I'm, you know, beyond that, I kind of think maybe
Yeah.
the title of that job should have been a little bit different because it was a lot of different things. It was a really also another very beautiful program.
Hmm.
Working with those who, have been trafficked or exploited, who have some sort of criminal charge. And
Yes.
so the role of that position at the time was to advocate for those individuals, in court, to help them transition from incarceration into whatever their next steps are, um, and then to provide programming to them while they were in jail. So that was very interesting to me. So I will
Yeah.
say that the job application and description did not say that I was going to be working inside of the jail. And so, that was probably
Yeah.
one of the funniest first days of work ever. But I really ended up loving it, and
Yeah.
that place, working in the sheriff's office, was really where it launched me into more like a better understanding of the criminal justice system,
Yes.
and all the inequities there. And so it's just another passion that's been added to the list, especially
Yes.
when criminal justice intersects with so many other justice issues. And so, um, yeah, that was a really fun job. It was one of the first jobs that well, I think any job you walk in, you don't really know what to expect,
Oh
but
no.
to be, housed inside. I had never been to jail, but I really got
Yeah.
to enjoy the people and, get to know, yeah, that system. So that was fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I can imagine you learned a ton.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely seeing those inequities in the system, I can imagine prepared you then as you went into your job now, where I know now you're chief program officer. You started as an operations director and then moved over to programs.
Right.
And as a drop-in center, for people who don't know what that means, it's a place for people to just for people who are working in commercial sex to stop in during the day. They can stop in and you can tell them about the services that y'all.
Yeah. So, from the sheriff's office, I transitioned to the landing. The landing has been open for about 7 years now. Um,
So
yeah,
awesome.
it's hard to, yeah. It's like we're still
Yeah.
young, but it's, just to see
But
the
it's
growth of this.
exploded. It's
It's
grown
exploded.
so much because of
Right.
how needed and how well it's done.
Yeah, certainly very needed. And so some people who are listening may be from Houston and some may not. So I'm going to explain the Bissonnet track.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Um, and so locally in Houston, we have a street called Bissonnet. It's in Southwest Houston. It's a place that, is notoriously known for trafficking, um, commercial sex, things like that. And so, about 7 years ago, our founders decided to open a center specifically in that area, to be direct, to just for direct access for people who are experiencing trafficking, exploitation, things like that. So we started as a drop-in center. Like you mentioned, it's like a daytime location, really a trust building center.
Yes.
So one of the gaps, in the, anti-trafficking work at times is, um, people have to leave their situation to receive services in a lot of programs. So
Yes.
people have to leave a trafficker. Um, and so that isolated a large portion of victims or people who are being trafficked. And so
Yeah.
the center was opened with that in mind, that, hey, anyone can come in, and we're here to build trust with you,
Yes.
one, maybe meet
Yeah.
your basic needs, get to know you. So when you're ready to leave, or when you're ready for, something different, then the people, the place, you just have the support system in place. It's kind of a backwards
Yes.
model, or maybe a little bit further up the stream than
Yes.
others. So yeah, that's how we
Yeah.
started as a drop-in center.
Yeah. And it was so unique at the time because it reached people in a different way than like, because I'd run like street outreach and stuff like that before. And that's one thing. But it's not nearly as effective, I think, as what the drop-in centers, was doing, because people were able to come there and not while they were out on the track working. They were able to come there when they wanted, not be encountered um, on the street, and receive services without judgment. Even just to get food or to I think y'all had like laundry and stuff like that, right? um, so they could come and take a nap, you know
Right.
while they were still working. They didn't have to exit and go to a safe house program or something like that. And I think that was a huge leap, quite honestly, forward, because it made accessible things that were totally cut off from that population before.
Right. Yeah. And so one of our goals is victim identification. So we know that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
individuals are never identified if they don't, if they're not extracted somehow from their situation, if they don't recognize that they're being trafficked. Oftentimes victims don't even know they're being
They
trafficked.
seldom do, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't know how to ask for help, don't know that there's help available. And so, um, that is a really big part of it, is, just making our services available, helping increase victim identification by engaging with those who are in the commercial
Mm-hmm.
sex trade in general. We know that group is not always trafficked, but, oftentimes is. So
Yeah,
just working with the broader population in that area has been helpful
yeah.
too.
And even if they're not being trafficked per se, you do offer counseling and things like that now, and case management, so that they can make a different choice if that's what if that's something that they choose to do.
Correct.
So yeah, and become more healthy,
Hmm.
more mentally, emotionally, physically, all of that stuff. Because physical health obviously is a big deal
Hmm.
um, among people being, in the sex trade. Um, a lot of them don't have access to medical services and stuff like that. And so I know that's something I'll help facilitate as well.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we work from a holistic approach. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
physical wellness, mental wellness, a lot of family reunification, legal support. Really the program model is client driven. So,
Mm-hmm.
whatever their needs are, housing, things like that, our staff, case managers are working with individuals to just help them reach whatever goals they have. We
Yeah,
do work on access to other services like medical care. So we work
sure.
in collaboration with medical providers, because physical wellness, mental wellness are things
It,
that they're
essential.
big things. They're very simple, and oftentimes they are what those are the vulnerabilities that people have, is not having access to these things. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I know y'all have evolved over the years, and are doing more than just being a drop-in center now.
right. Right. So we, you mentioned how we met on outreach some years
Mm-hmm.
ago. So we do have an outreach program at the landing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, We have an outreach program where we're reaching individuals who may be being trafficked. We're not sure, but they're in circumstances or in, environments where it's very likely. And so that looks
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of like it was when we used to go out, but,
Mm-hmm.
going on the street, where individuals may be, um, participating in the commercial sex trade, walking up and down the street, and engaging with people who want to talk. If they want to
Yeah.
talk, if they need access to any kind of resource, we bring Gatorade, we bring hand
Yes.
warmers, we bring, condoms, we bring anything that, someone might need, really in
Yeah.
hopes to build relationships with them.
Yeah.
And, we talked about like the access gap. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
with them understanding who we are, what we do, there's actually some help available if need be. So we
Yeah.
do outreach. We do some in the court setting as well, working with individuals. I mentioned earlier, like how the criminal justice system and trafficking, victimization overlap a lot. So um,
Tons of stuff
providing,
overlaps.
yeah. So we do
So
some
much
court
overlap.
outreach. Yeah, we do some court outreach as well. We're working with individuals who have some sort of, criminal charge related to
Mm-hmm.
prostitution, commercial sex, things like that. So
Yeah.
outreach programming is something that is a part of what we do. We do online outreach as well, reaching
Mm-hmm.
ads and things like that for people who might be being exploited. So
Yeah.
outreach is a big part of our work. The drop-in center, like we mentioned. And then we also have a youth advocacy program now, and that program is about
Yes.
3 years old. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, we're now serving youth victims of trafficking about 3 years now. So yes, it has
That's
expanded
awesome.
over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. It's definitely grown from being open, a couple of days a week as a
Mhm.
drop-in center to now being just like this wraparound, full service agency, which is super exciting and really amazing considering what a short time it's
Right.
in operation. And I love that because I know you've been a huge part. Um, you've been one of the consistent people there for,
Hmm.
for a
Yeah.
long time, helping build all of that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting to see evolve, for sure. Like you mentioned, maybe not being open that many days, even the physical space having to expand and add on new staff and add on new
Yes.
programs, and so it has been a really unique and interesting experience to kind of watch
Yeah.
something grow and watch the community
Yeah.
get behind it and watch people come and get the help that they need. So it's been fun.
Well, I know you've done a lot of work. I mean, you went back and got your social work degree, master's in social work, while you were still doing all of this,
Right.
um, which is a lot. Somebody has done for working full time and gone back to graduate school. I
Right.
know
Yeah.
what it is. Um, and, so you did that and you got your master's in social work during COVID, which sucked because you couldn't walk.
Correct. Yes. I still look at my gown in the closet and I'm like, I never got to wear this gown. I need to take pictures in it.
Me
Yes.
too. Just to have.
I know.
Um, but um, but that was a huge step too, because you took it upon yourself to um, build a much broader skill base for yourself so that you could enhance what was going on in your own life and in the work you're doing. Because now you also are you done with your I think you said you were done with your clinical hours,
I
right?
am also done with, yes, the clinical hours.
So are you officially LCSW now?
Not
Or you
yet.
just
I
still
need to take the
haven't taken the
time to take
test?
the test. Yeah. So I have my
Okay.
hours and, yeah, I just need to take the test.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you're about to be, a fully licensed, counselor as well. Um, from a LCSW is a counselor.
Right.
Um, from a social work perspective, which I kind of love. My favorite counselor ever was an LCSW, rather than LPC. Nothing against LPCs. Love,
Right.
got great friends that are LPCs, but I love the LCSW like slant,
Mm-hmm.
the social work slant to it. So that's really cool. And then you're also involved in other stuff outside of the landing as well. Trafficking obviously has been a huge part of both of our lives.
Right.
But you like me, you've also gotten involved in other things.
Mhm.
So, would you tell people about what you're doing in addition to, working at the landing and counseling
Yeah.
and all the things?
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting even my transition into doing therapy because it wasn't necessarily something that I initially thought that I would do. I do, like you said, the social work license is pretty flexible, and I do love that
Hmm.
because I get to do a lot of macro kind of community work,
Hmm.
like I do at the landing, and then um, I can also do that one-on-one individual therapy and counseling with people. Um, and honestly, that's been a really good experience for me to keep me well-rounded. So I like to be, like one thing when you first get into the anti-trafficking movement, you're just engulfed. Like everything you do is
Yes.
anti-trafficking. Every movie you watch, your friends, and so over the years, I
Yes.
have really, put an effort to not just do that
Yes.
because it's like
I totally understand that because yes, we've been on that same road.
yes, and
Let's have
so
different
doing
conversations now.
yeah, it absolutely is. And so doing the therapy practice on the side, it was a nice, so it's a trauma therapy practice. However,
Hmm.
it wasn't only victims of trafficking. So it was a different spin. So it was kind of taking, so that was really nice actually. So I was really grateful that the opportunity presented itself to me because had it not presented itself to me, I don't think that I would have, done it. But, so that's been really, yeah, that's been interesting. I didn't think that I would like it actually either, but,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a great supervisor who really kind of taught me up, how to do things. And so she's obviously an
That's
LCSW
awesome.
also. But
Yeah.
yeah, so outside of the landing, doing therapy, just honestly for self, I just have really worked hard at not having my life wrapped around this anti-trafficking movement. So
Yes.
even, being involved in sorority or other justice initiatives. I'm not sure which angle you want me to go with.
No, any. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you're involved in a racial justice initiative.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah. So
so
that
which I
initiative
think
is
is
called
really
the
big because that's an intersection big time with both the criminal justice system and the anti-trafficking movement.
Yeah. So the Justice Series is a group of us, so a group of leaders, African American leaders in the anti-social work initiative, kind of in the community, have been really talking a lot about some of the racial justice issues that are going on in the work that we
Hmm.
do,
Hmm.
um, and just kind of how we, as leaders in this space, have experienced some of that.
Yeah.
Um, so what we did was we started to do just maybe like these community talks and community discussions
Hmm.
where we're engaging our partners in the fight, engaging the community to really learn about trafficking, anti-trafficking, but from a racial justice lens.
Yeah.
Um, and so these other agencies, their leadership as so we've been doing this for about 2 years now. We're
Hmm.
putting on like maybe talks. We bring in really powerful maybe speakers with lived experience, or there's always an art element because the art brings people
That's
together. So
awesome.
sometimes it's like
Hmm.
film or spoken word, or even like a musical instrument violinist. So the goal is to bring people together, use art to do so, and really elevate the conversations from surface level to
Yeah.
actually understanding the intricacies of injustice and
Yes.
tracking exploitation, racism, and so those have been neat. So that's been one of it's called the Justice Series, and so
Just
um,
yes.
typically like to find information about the Justice Series, you could look at like the landing social media page or
Yeah.
and we'll have events that are posted there.
Yeah, which is really cool. Um, I remember I was fortunate to attend one of the early meetings a few years ago when I was still a leader in anti-trafficking. And one of the things that was pointed out, is that the majority of the like executive directors of these anti-trafficking organizations are white.
Mhm.
Um, and the leadership, the boards, when you look at the boards, um, that's something that is still an issue.
Right.
So I think it's really important that y'all are doing this, emphasizing, the the need, for diversity, for Black voices to be brought into.
Hmm.
these spaces and to recognize that there is disparity um,
Right.
in how things are being done
Hmm.
and how things are for for victims of
Yeah.
different races.
Hmm.
So I think that's awesome. Um, so what do you think is coming up in the future for you? Any thoughts as far as like what's next?
Well, you and everyone else can be encouraging me to take my test. Okay, need to take my, like, there's just
Send
really
you a
no.
text like once a week. Be like, Shani, you
Yes,
taking that test?
I've
You
been
studying?
struggling. I have been like, I need to take this test. I don't know. I'm not nervous. I don't know what's stopping me, but I just need to do that. So that's what's next. And the immediate next steps is I
Yeah,
really need to
getting
take
that out
this
of the way.
test, get it over with. I don't know. It's like when you're out of school, when you get out of school, you're just like, I don't want to do anything else. I can't pick
I
up
know.
another book.
Yes,
So I don't know. I need to take that test. That's what's next.
I get it.
And then, I don't know. I mean, I enjoy the space that I'm in and the work that I get to do.
Yeah,
Um, Potentially, I'm thinking maybe some of the clinical work that I'm doing, the trainings and the therapy might increase some of that. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's awesome because I know you've got a lot of valuable experience to offer to people. I know that being trained in some of the things that you're able to offer trainings and things like crisis management and um, PBRI and all that kind of stuff as well. So you've got a wealth of knowledge that you could be out there, offering to people. And I think um, as time goes on, that's going to be a really awesome thing for you. Maybe
yeah,
one day you'll be, Shani Bacy, corporation.
yeah. I mean, I think that will happen
They're
at
doing your
some
thing.
point. Yes,
Yeah,
at some point. But yeah,
doing your
even
thing,
still,
training
like
people.
I do some of those trainings, like the trauma trainings and the crisis intervention. So those
Yeah,
things do happen now. But yeah, you're right. Maybe it'll be a little bit
yeah,
more formalized.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're young. You've still got plenty of time.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But yeah.
Well, I'm older than you, so please.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. So, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, about the landing, about the Justice series, you mentioned it could find it on the landings, social media, and stuff like that, or about any of the other projects, that you think that would be good for, information, where can they do that?
Yeah. So to find information about the Justice series, find following the landings, social media pages, or even the newsletter that we have. You can get access to that at www.thelanding.org.
Yes, I'll
Um,
put that in the notes.
yeah, and I said that really fast. You'll have to type that
That's okay.
for everybody. But you
Always
can
put
find
those in the notes.
information there. Yeah. And then as far as like the clinical work, the trainings and, you know, therapy, things like that. Um, you can find me at Cultivating Changes therapy practice at this time. Maybe you could put my email address. I'll give it to you, Desiree, to put in the
Absolutely.
notes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you can reach out and get to know Shani a little better. She's pretty awesome, and the landing is a great program. Shani's been a huge part of building it. As now chief program officer, I mean, she's kind of running the show over there.
Oh, no,
Parts.
no, I enjoy it. We have a good team, and
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's kind of weird to think that we've been doing this work for this long now,
I
but
know. So
yeah,
many other people have kind of cycled out of it.
hmm,
But
yeah,
still here, still here,
kind of weird.
still here.
Yeah,
That's okay. But like you said, broaden your horizons and
yeah,
disentangled yourself from the fully like being like fully enmeshed constantly. Because
yeah,
10 years ago I would have been like, this is all I talk about. This is all I socialize with. Yeah,
yep,
and you have to learn.
yes, you do.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Shawnee. It's been so great talking to you, and it's always good to see your face. And we need to have brunch. Um,
Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you for. Yeah,
Absolutely, and thank you everybody for listening. This is Desiree Parker, and this has been Empower Together. We'll see you next time.